Today, we're going to dig into how something as simple as a dress code can absolutely explode into a full-blown workplace nightmare. Seriously, this is a case study in exactly what not to do. It's a story about miscommunication, humiliation, and just a total failure of management. Let's get into it. Okay, let's just start with this quote right here. This is from an official human resources memo. Out of context, it's pretty shocking, right? Well, in context, it's actually even worse. How on earth did a conversation about a work uniform end with a company putting comments about an employee's body shape in an email? Let's unpack this. So where did this all begin? Well, like a lot of these stories, it started with something pretty simple, a customer complaint. The complaint wasn't even about one person. It was about a supposed short skirt club at a car dealership. But this one comment kicked off a chain reaction that would end up forcing an employee right out of her job. And the whole thing just blew up incredibly fast. I mean, look at this. It starts with a policy review in October, and by the end of January, it's a full-blown crisis ending in a resignation. The really critical moments, the ones that just sent this whole thing over the edge, they all happened in just a couple of weeks. It all started with just one conversation. So let's set the scene. It's January 2nd. HR pulls a salesperson, Amy Tonkin, aside. They tell her the skirt she's wearing is too short, and they suggest she try on a bigger size. Now, look, that's probably an awkward conversation, but it could have been fine. A simple, private chat about the uniform policy. But as you're about to see, this was just the beginning. All right, so a slightly awkward conversation, but manageable, right? Wrong. This is the exact moment everything went off the rails. The situation spiraled from a standard HR issue to a case of public humiliation, and it all started with one just breathtakingly unprofessional email. And here it is. This is the full context for that quote we saw a minute ago. Just 6 days after that first meeting, an HR rep sends a memo to Amy Tonkin with this line in it. But here's the kicker. Who else was on that email? Her managers. This was not some private note. It was a professional critique of her body, sent to her bosses. I mean, how would you feel? Tonkin was understandably mortified. She replied right away, saying how upset and embarrassed she was by the comments. And she asked a perfectly reasonable question. Why were her managers copied on this? She just wanted an explanation. But management's response here is so telling. Instead of maybe acknowledging her feelings or, the massive breach of privacy, they just shut her down. When she asked if other female employees were also being scrutinized like this, they told her the question was inappropriate. The focus immediately shifted from their bad behavior to her reaction. And this was the breaking point. Later that very same day, the stress just became too much. Tonkin had a mental breakdown and had to be put on stress leave. She told her doctor she felt like the company was blaming her body for the problem, instead of just admitting their uniform didn't fit properly. This wasn't just a work issue anymore. It was now a serious personal health crisis. So, where do we go from here? The employee is on stress leave, the company's scrambling to deal with a crisis they created, and the whole relationship is just destroyed. This next part is all about the aftermath, the attempts at damage control, the resignation, and the final, kind of shocking verdict. While she was on leave, one of her former managers apparently told her it just never should have happened. But when she asked for a formal written apology, this is what she got: an offer to apologize, but only if she signed a document promising not to use it against them. It wasn't about remorse, it was a legal CYA move. She refused to be silenced, and she didn't sign it. So, no surprise, when she got back to work, the situation was impossible. After another frustrating meeting, she just resigned. That was on January 28th. And in her exit form, she didn't mince words. She accused the company of sexual harassment, discrimination, and bullying. And the company's official response to her claims? A complete, flat-out denial. They basically said everything related to the dress code was handled appropriately and reasonably. So now you have this massive gap between her experience of total humiliation and their version of professional conduct. And this all leads to a really fascinating and frankly disturbing outcome. Tonkin took her case to the Fair Work Commission, but her claim was dismissed. Why? Because the tribunal found she resigned voluntarily. She wasn't technically forced out. So, on paper, the company won. But, and this is a huge but, the tribunal's commentary was absolutely scathing. They said the company's handling of the whole thing was poorly handled from start to finish. It's the definition of a legal win, but a massive ethical and managerial failure. Okay, so why are we talking about this? Why does this one case from a car dealership matter to you and me? Because it is a masterclass in how not to manage people. It gives us these crystal clear, universal lessons for any employee, any manager, or any company on how to handle sensitive issues with just a little bit of dignity and respect. When you really boil it down, this entire disaster comes down to 4 huge failures, and we're going to walk through each one. These are the core takeaways. The difference between HR and public shaming, what real accountability looks like, that classic tactic of blaming the victim, and the really dangerous gap between what's legal and what's actually right. First, and this one should be the most obvious, public shaming is not an HR tool. The decision to put comments about an employee's body in writing and then share it with her bosses is a staggering breach of privacy. Any talk about dress codes needs to be about the policy, handled privately, with sensitivity. It should never, ever be about a person's body. Second, let's talk accountability. A real apology is about owning your mistake and trying to repair trust. An apology that comes with legal strings attached does the exact opposite. It's a self-serving move that basically screams, we care more about protecting ourselves than about the harm we caused you. That doesn't fix a broken culture, it proves the culture is broken.
The third lesson is all about blame. In its final letter, after everything she had been through, the company described her as argumentative and confrontational. Let's be really clear about what that is.
It's victim blaming 101. Instead of looking in the mirror and asking, wow, how did our actions cause an employee to have a mental breakdown? They pointed the finger at her for how she reacted to being mistreated. It's a defensive move that stops any real learning and just fosters a toxic environment. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial lesson of all. The company won in court. Technically, their actions weren't illegal in the specific context of forcing a resignation. But this just proves that the law is the absolute floor, not the ceiling. You can do something that is technically legal, but is still a catastrophic ethical and managerial failure that completely demolishes morale, trust, and your reputation. Which leaves us with this one big question, doesn't it? This case is such a stark reminder that just clearing the low bar of not illegal is a terrible standard for how we treat people at work. It really forces us to ask what we should expect from our employers and what standards we should hold ourselves to. Is a workplace that is simply not illegal really a place where anyone can do their best work?